welcome to Movie Review Mom. I'm the mom and I do the movie reviews. Thanks for visiting me here on my channel. I hope you enjoy what you're about to hear and that you subscribe and ring that little bell while you're clicking on the subscribe button because it'll notify you every time that I upload a new movie review or a trailer reaction. You can also follow me on Instagram in two different ways. I've been listed as Trina Boice for a long time, but I recently added a movie review mom Instagram profile on Instagram. So follow whichever one you want and you can get the latest scoop on contests that I'm having and other fun stuff that I often forget to talk about in my movie reviews. All right, so my goal is to give you the heads up on filmmaking quality and content so you can make the best decision for yourself and your family about whether or not you want to watch a specific movie. And I'm trying to save you time and money because that's what it takes to watch a movie these days, right? Well, not just these days, always. I'm trying to save you time and money. So the specific movie I'm reviewing today is called Voyagers. This movie is currently in theaters only. It's a Lionsgate production, and Lionsgate hasn't really been consistent in when they decide to allow movies to go from theaters to video on demand. So there is no streaming date announced yet. So if this sounds like an awesome movie to you, you're going to have to go to the theater to watch it for now. The movie is rated PG-13, although the film almost got an R rating from the MPAA. It's an hour and 48 minutes, and I'm going to give you my movie review mom grade at the end of my review. Hopefully that'll keep you watching. All right, I'm going to give you an overview in a nutshell. I'll point out things I liked and didn't like. I'll offer tips for parents, themes worth talking about with your family if you watch it with your kids, and even I'll give you some recommendations for other movies that you might like as much as this one if you enjoy this one, or maybe even more if you don't like this one. All right, so let's dive in. In a nutshell, hormonal teenagers running amok on a spaceship. What could possibly go wrong? This teen thriller feels like a futuristic space version of William Golding's famous book, Lord of the Flies. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, but it's exactly what it feels like. And if you liked Lord of the Flies, you might actually get a kick out of this futuristic rendition of the story. However, it doesn't claim to be based on the book at all. It's just kind of my perception is that's what it feels like. This dramatic movie is both written and directed by Neil Burger. He stated about the film, it's about human nature in a vacuum, who we are at our core. Now, I really like some of Neil Burger's films like Limitless. I highly recommend that. Plus, who doesn't love Bradley Cooper? But I really liked the idea of that story. And even the TV spin-off of the movie was also very good. And I recommend that too. I just thought that the idea was interesting on how drugs affect the human psyche and how we see the world. I've recently been on medication because I am severely allergic to all the allergens flying through the spring air in Las Vegas where I live right now. And I can literally feel my brain slowing down because of all of this allergy medication. So anyway, I just thought it was an interesting topic. I also really like Neil Burger's Divergent franchise. I thought that was entertaining. And so I was ultimately really excited to see what he was going to do with this movie. So first, let me tell you the things that I liked about the movie and what he did. First of all, Ty Sheridan leads the pack of hormonal teens in space. I really liked him in the movie Ready Player One, and he's even been in recent X-Men movies, as well as many others. He actually got his start at a very young age with roles in movies like Mud and Joe. He always plays a likable character. And so I kind of immediately liked his character just from the get-go, which I know isn't fair, but I did. I'm admitting it. Anyway, fans of Johnny Depp will get a kick out of seeing his daughter, Lily Rose, playing the leading lady in this movie. Her mom is the famous French singer Vanessa Paradis. Wow, what talented parents. You can also see her in her most recent movie called Crisis. And I did a movie review of that movie. That's a movie that's really flown under the radar for most moviegoers. So, anyway, check that one out. Colin Farrell is also in the cast, and he just always makes a film better, I think. Sadly, he's really underutilized in this movie. Another leading character is played by Fionn Whitehead from Dunkirk, which is another great movie that I recommend. While most of the movie is pretty dark in theme, the ending sequence was actually hopeful. As viewers, we know that's not the end of the story, so it's kind of fun to imagine what would happen next. There might be a sequel, and if the movie's successful, you know there will be. But I really liked the concept of sacrifice for the greater good and how the characters that we watch in this movie, in this story, never will actually land at their destination as they're hurtling through space. Instead, their grandchildren are going to be the ones to reach the goal because it's going to take like 80 years for them to get to their destination. In that regard, the movie reminded me a lot of Passengers, which I'll talk about more in a few minutes. Many of the scenes feel really claustrophobic, which causes us to imagine what would it be like to live in that kind of an environment. And it's appropriate because they're in a spaceship in very tight spaces. The set designs are clean and sleek, kind of how you would expect a spaceship to look, I think, in the future. The musical score is really great, and there's some impressive cinematography, especially considering so much was filmed in these tight spaces. Now, on to some of the things that I didn't like or thought could have been handled better. So, first of all, you need to suspend your disbelief to initially accept the questionable premise of raising children in a sterile, almost non human environment, as if that's ever going to be a good idea. It certainly makes a case for the importance of being nurtured rather than engineered as children. Children need to learn how to handle emotions. And so these kids are raised without the ability to experience emotional swings because they take this liquid. And one of them finally realizes that if they don't drink this blue drink that they're required to, that all of a sudden he can start feeling things. And so he convinces everybody else to stop drinking. And then that's when all chaos breaks loose. I mean, that's not a spoiler. You see that in the trailer. There's a scene where the music starts to build, and then all of a sudden, the music stops and the screen reads 10 years later, like SpongeBob, 10 years later. There are several abrupt transitions like that I thought were just kind of odd. And then some things just don't really make that much sense in terms of the timeline. For example, the kids aren't supposed to have emotions when they're young, but one of them starts to cry, and another one says he's afraid long before they stop drinking this substance that prevents them from feeling and experiencing emotion. So I'm like, was that a foreshadowing or their way of telling us that this formula that they were drinking isn't 100% accurate? I don't know. This actually could have been interesting as a mini series on TV so that there really would be enough time to get to know the characters and care about them. As it is, most of the teenagers are just super annoying. Some of the secondary characters aren't compelling at all. And so honestly, you're kind of like, whoever dies, dies. You know, you just don't get really invested in them. And that's not good. There's awkward dialogue that makes it really difficult for the actors to really dig in. And it also makes the movie feel like it's being treated at a surface level, really than digging deep and exploring some nuances. It wastes the potential of taking a more profound look at human nature. Acts 1 and 2 start to dive into those concepts, but then Act 3 basically turns into a young adult thriller that only addresses the underlying issues on a surface level. There really isn't any humor, and most of the characters are very robotic during the entire film, even after they stop drinking that blue drink. Now, let me give you some tips for parents. There is some portrayal of sexual relations and sexual assault. So there's a heads up. I mean, you can see the movie poster and tell stuff's going to go down, right? There's some teens without clothes on, although you don't see like full frontal or anything like that, nudity. There is some violence with blood. Now, some of the themes that are illustrated in the movie are nature versus nurture, emotions, power, control, the meaning of your life, truth versus dishonesty, impulse control, even toxic masculinity, with fear creating divisions among us. What is the true nature of humans is asked. But wait, there's more. Sacrifices for humanity, questioning drugs and jealousy. So the movie tries to pack a lot of concepts and issues into a very short runtime. So that's why I keep saying that the movie is really more at a surface level, because there's simply no time to really dive deep in all of those. So I always write down funny lines and interesting lines when I watch movies so that I can share them with you so you can kind of get a flavor for the movie. I didn't write down any funny lines because I didn't hear any, but there are some interesting lines. I always include all of them on my written review at moviereviewmom.com. You can check out the full review there. Colin Farrell is talking about the idea that these children are never going to reach the destination, but that their grandchildren will. So then he talks about his grandparents and he says, I never knew them, but I know they lived an honest life. That's all any of us can do. And I thought that that was really powerful, because you don't know what's going to be in the future and what life will be like, what people will say about you. But you always know that right now you can live a life of integrity, and that matters. And then again, in another conversation, he says, you have to decide what kind of a person you want to be. And that's regardless of circumstances. No matter what's happening in the world, you decide what kind of a person are you. And then, all right, I'll give you one more. This is an interesting line where Phoebe, played by Shantae Adams, says, which is better, to have rules and agree, kind of like blind obedience, or run wild and fight, which is basically what happens in this movie. Spoiler. All right. So ultimately, based on those reasons and more, and others I've probably forgotten to mention, the movie review mom grade I'm giving this movie is a B minus. It just sort of devolves into craziness. But before we go, let me give you some recommendations for some other movies that I think that you might enjoy if you like this one. I mentioned the movie Passengers with Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. There's something about that movie that I really, really love. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now. I'm kind of embarrassed, but it's that I liked it that much. And then another movie I immediately thought of, probably because of all of the teenagers in it, is Ender's Game, which is a book that was written in 1985 by Orson Scott Card. I actually got to hear him speak at a writer's conference and learn a little bit about how this book was turned into a movie and just how he wrote the book in general. Anyway, super, super nice guy and fascinating to meet an author who's made it big like that. All right, that's it for my movie review today. Thanks for sticking around to the bitter end and for subscribing. Be sure and like this video, comment down below, because all of those actions really helped me build my channel, and I really appreciate that. You can also run over to Patreon and support me there if you want. I hope if you watch this movie that you do enjoy it, and I will catch you in the next movie review. Bye for now.